Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, the space where we take a breath, find beauty in the slow moments, and live with purpose on purpose. I'm your host, Kendra Chapman, mom of triplets, principal by day, and your guide in navigating intentional living one season at a time. If you're tuning in today feeling rushed, stretched too thin, or wondering why everything feels just a little off, you are not alone. Today, we're diving into one of the most grounding tools I use to find peace amidst the chaos: seasonal living. We can talk about how aligning our routines, mindset, and even our meals with nature's rhythms can bring more calm, clarity, and energy into our days. I'll also share some wisdom from traditional sources like the Old Farmer's Almanac, and how our ancestors tuned into Earth's cues long before microphones, smartphones, and planners were a thing. So whether you're cozied up at home, driving to work, or walking around the block, grab a drink or just take a breath and let's explore how to live in better rhythm with the season you're in. So I want to say welcome back to those of you who have been listening to my podcast. And if you are a new listener, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This week, I'm going to talk about what's bringing me hygge, and that is watching our bird neighbors. In this first segment, we have my husband and I put up some bird boxes around the perimeter of our house on our fence line at the beginning of, like, right before springtime, hoping that we could encourage birds to nest in the bird boxes instead of in the eaves of our house. And while that did deter a bit of the nesting that was going on this time last year, we did, see a few birds nesting in our eaves, but we've definitely seen an influx in birds nesting in the bird boxes as well, which is really cutting down on our insects outside. We're able to sit outside on the back porch without having to worry about getting eaten up by bugs. And it's just been a joy to watch the birds at work. And it's fascinating to me. If you've ever sat and watched birds build their nest and then lay their eggs, and then once the eggs hatch, feeding their hatchlings, it's just fascinating how much they work and how just constantly they are going in and out of their nest. And I remember watching when we moved to the farm while we were building our house for the last, like, 4 years ago. We started building, but we moved to the farm about a year and a half ago. And we were living on the property in an old farmhouse. And the front porch, it was very quaint, very rustic. And there were at least two nests going at any given time from spring until fall, it seemed like. And I just was fascinated with how much the male and the female work to feed their young. And of course, nature repeats itself every season. And so I'm really enjoying watching that. And I've posted a video of one of our parent couples going into a bird box and feeding their young. My husband and I have been going back and forth about what kind of bird it is. I believe it's a type of swallow. My husband looked it up and thinks it's a blue swallow of some sort. I know it's not an indigo bunting and it's not a bluebird, so we're thinking it's a swallow by its tail. But I listen to the bird sounds on the app that you can download that I've mentioned before on my podcast, and it is super helpful to identify birds, the Merlin bird ID, but I wasn't getting this particular bird on my app. So I wasn't really sure what kind it was, but I think we've identified that it is a swallow. And you can check out my Instagram video that I posted this week, and you can let me know what you think. The male he's a dark blue iridescent, and the female is very, like, downplayed on the colors, probably more like a gray. And you see that a lot in birds where the female is more muted in their coloring than the male, but it's just so interesting to watch them. So that has been what has been bringing me hygge this week, just watching the birds, our neighbors, going in and out of their bird box and feeding their young. And it is a small thing, but it just helps me to slow down and exhale, because I can see that there are other beings on our planet working really hard, but it's the simple things. They're in their local area, going around, gathering their food for their young, and then just really focusing on the main thing, keeping their babies alive and helping them grow. And then they're going to do it all over again the next, time the season comes back around. So I think it's very appropriate to kind of think about what season you're in, what you're working on right now, and if you want to keep repeating this or if you're going to make some changes and maybe slow down, maybe add to what your practice has been in this season now. And if you want to make it different, or if you want to pare down, like what are you going to be doing differently the next time this season comes around based on what you're doing right now? And again, that's just something that I've been thinking about too. So, in segment 2, my Huga highlight, I want to talk about seasonal living. So, let's talk about how living in sync with the natural cycles can bring more peace and energy into your modern life. And, we weren't meant to operate the same way all year round, but we do typically. We push through winter like it's summer. We ignore the cues our body gives us, and we often feel depleted, foggy, or off balance. But what if instead of pushing harder, we aligned more intentionally with the season that we're actually in, that we're living through right now? And depending on if you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, you are seeing a change in season. Right now, we're going from spring into summer in the northern hemisphere. And so that would be opposite in the southern hemisphere. You guys are going from fall into winter, most likely. And so you're dealing with that change as well. But what if instead we honor the energy of the season that we're in? And so I want to add some research into this. Research in chronobiology, it's the science of biology and biological rhythms that show our bodies how to respond to light, temperature, and seasonal shifts in ways that we often overlook. So there was a study in 2020 in Nature Communications where they found that mood, sleep, and even immune function change with the seasons. So in spring and summer, we naturally encourage more movement, growth, and outdoor socializing because of the sun. And then in fall and winter, because the sun is changing, the daylight hours are going down, they're decreasing, that calls us to go inward towards rest, reflection, and slower routines, right? And we know this, but what does it mean for us? Give yourself permission to do less in winter without guilt. Start winding down with the season. And then in the same respect, be thinking about how more energized you feel as the sun is increasing and daylight hours are increasing. Naturally, you're going to feel like you have more energy because of your exposure to the sun for longer periods of time, but be thinking about how you can adjust this throughout the year so you can rest and reflect and have a slower routine in the fall and winter, because you want to give yourself permission to do less without guilt when the season calls for it. So, waking earlier in the summer, using seasonal transitions like the equinoxes are all natural times to pause and reset. All right. Another strategy, eating with the season. If you think about all the foods that we see in the market, in the grocery store, a lot of our foods may not be from local areas, but the more you can source your foods from local farmers, the better. Of course, during the months where things are in season are going to be better for you. They hopefully would be cheaper and more fresh, and that you're more willing to cook and bake with these seasonal items. And so I've been looking at the old farmer's almanac because it reminds me that nature provides exactly what we need when we need it. So in the colder months, we have root vegetables like carrots and beets. And my neighbors, they give us 5 pounds of potatoes, sweet potatoes, every fall. And it's amazing because I can basically use that entire amount of potatoes throughout the winter months to feed my family. And we don't get tired of it because there's so many recipes you can use for sweet potatoes. But if you think about all the root vegetables, carrots, beets, potatoes, they are warming and nourishing, and they're so good in stews and casseroles and as a side dish throughout your fall and winter time frame. But then in the summer, think about all the fresh vegetables and fruits that you can use. Cucumbers and berries and greens, right? They are helping you cool and hydrate. And so sometimes I just don't feel like cooking and I'd rather just make a salad and then maybe grill some meat or fish and then just throw that on the salad. And that typically is more for me. My husband's not much on salads, but my kids are starting to be more into all kinds of vegetables, which is nice. So, there is a study from the British Journal of Nutrition that found that people who ate seasonal produce had a better nutrient intake, digestion, and mood. So, there's some research for you. Thinking about in the fall, adding more soups and squashes and warm teas into your diet. And in the spring, think about lightening your meals up with sprouts, citrus, and leafy greens. And if you can skip the strawberries in December, that's definitely a good idea, but we all like to have our fruits year round. But if you can eat more local and what's in season, you're going to feel better and you'll have a variety of foods throughout your year that you can mix up and, choose to eat your strawberries when they're sun ripened in June. They're going to taste so much better. Um, and hopefully they'll be a little bit cheaper in the grocery store that way. Now, there is an old world tip that the almanac suggests making seasonal tonics like dandelion tea in the spring to wake the liver or elderberry syrup in the fall to boost your immunity. These are traditions and they remind us that food is not just fuel, it's medicine in the rhythm with the earth. And I've been able to find dandelion roots that are dried online on Amazon. You can order them and use them throughout the year in your tea. They help me with menopause, with hot flashes, and they have so many other great medicinal qualities. But, according to the old almanac, they also wake up the liver. They help you digest better. They are good for your digestion. You can go literally out into the yard if you see dandelions and you can harvest them and then dry them. I have a bag from last year that I dried out, and then you use it in your teas, and it does work. You just have to try it and see what you think. Everybody's body's a little different, but I have not tried elderberry syrup, and I make a simple syrup for my hummingbirds with just 1 part sugar, just regular white sugar, and then 1 part water. And sometimes I add more water to that. I don't like it to be super sweet, but I make a simple syrup. And so I'm going to look at this elderberry syrup and see if I can find a good recipe. And if anybody out there has a good recipe for elderberry syrup, please share. All right, third strategy that I want to talk about is tracking moon phases to plan accordingly. So, old wisdom and modern insight, there is a blend here. Historically, farmers planted and harvested by the moon. And right now, we've just had a new moon as of yesterday, Memorial Day of 2025. And when you harvest by the moon or plant by the moon, root crops during the waning moon, leafy crops during the waxing moon, women also track their cycles this way, syncing rest, creativity, and productivity with the lunar rhythms. And this is an old practice. But how this helps us, if you use the new moon to set intention, which is kind of when we're planning, we're in the planning phase, we're planting seeds. Literally, you can plant your seeds at the new moon, or you can metaphorically do this and start thinking about what you want to focus on, what your goals are, and what do you want to see and seed and sow so you can harvest at the full moon. And then you want to use your full moons to release or celebrate. So notice when your energy surges or dips. It might not be your fault. It might be the phase of the moon. So be thinking about that. The moon does not only drive the tides of the sea, but it definitely different phases of our mood as well. And I notice this as a middle school principal. When it's a full moon, teachers, I know you're out there and you totally agree. And I know nurses and doctors in emergency rooms can totally see the difference in a new moon versus a full moon. So we definitely see a change in mood with the moon. We just may not always pay attention to it until we look back and go, oh, yeah, it was a full moon. A modern tip I want to share is I keep a little moon tracker in my planner. I do just kind of note like when the full moon's going to be coming. So I think about, okay, we need to have a good plan for supervision at school because the kids are definitely going to be a little bit more energetic. We might have an influx in behaviors. We just need to be more aware so we can make sure not only are we monitoring behavior at all times, but we're a little bit more aware around the full moons. So be thinking about ways that you can be a little bit more aware. Notice patterns in your mood, your sleep, and your productivity, and see if it has anything to do with the moon or with the time of the year. And, just keep track of it. If you have a planner, maybe keep track of certain times when you're feeling really low, your energy is depleted, maybe when you're not getting good sleep, and then start tracking and seeing if there's anything you can change about that time frame. If you notice that there's going to be times where the moon is going to be full and you've got a lot on your plate, maybe there's times where you can spread out your meetings or you can spread out your activities so you're not, saying yes to everything and you're leaving yourself some space so you can breathe and recoup and rest as much as possible. Because awareness is key when you're thinking about your health and your well-being and your self-care. And, it doesn't hurt to kind of check the nature and those phases of nature that are reoccurring. All right. So for segment 3, I want to just talk about how you can connect with me. While this is, everything that I'm planning on talking about in my episode today of the Go Slow to Go Fast lifestyle podcast, I hope that you're feeling more in tune with the rhythms around you and within you, and maybe a little bit more aware of maybe thinking about the phases of the moon or the time of the year. Equinoxes, that's like when the sun is closer to the earth, and your solstices are when the sun is further away from the earth. You also have to think about the tilt of the axis of the earth. That's a real general way of thinking about it, but your spring and fall equinox is when the sun is at a certain point in comparison to the earth. And your solstices, it's kind of opposite. In the winter solstice, the sun is closer to the earth than in the summer solstice. So it's just really interesting to be thinking about planetary placement, sunlight, how many hours of sunlight a day are we getting at a particular part of the year, and being kind of in tune with how your body's feeling with rest and relaxation and energy levels. So it's something to be thinking about and be mindful of if you notice that there's a pattern at a particular time of the year where you might start getting sick again with the weather changes and possibly sunlight. It's just one other thing to be paying attention to if you want to be more aware about self-care and your health. So I'd love to hear from you. What's one seasonal shift that you're embracing this month? Is it switching up your meals, starting your mornings with a little, intention? Are you going a little slower? Or maybe are you thinking about adding some herbal tea into your routine for the day? And are you also thinking about maybe doing less on your phone, decreasing your screen time, maybe having more sunshine instead of screen shine, right? Let's keep the conversation going. If you wanted to reach out to me and let me know what you are working on during this season to keep yourself healthy and energized, I'd love to hear more. Consider emailing me at coachingwithkendrachapman@gmail.com or checking out my website, which is called coachingwithkendrachapman.com, or following me on Instagram at coachingwithkendrachapman. I'd love to see what you are doing to have more of a seasonal living ritual in your everyday. And I hope that you consider tagging me and sharing a photo of what's going on in your life around this theme. If this episode gave you a moment of clarity, peace, or even just permission to slow down, please share it with a friend or everybody you know who might need the same. And as always, remember, take it slow, be intentional, embrace the season you're in, because the grounded woman in me honors the grounded woman in you. And until next time, breathe deep, live gently, keep leading with your heart, and let your light shine through. And until next time, go slow to go fast. Thanks for listening.